in the once prosperous kingdom of Clérue, nestled between black-barked forests and high, moaning cliffs, there lived a merchant named Corbin Leclerc. His fortune had come from the sea, spices, dyes and exotic oils, but as quickly as wealth had come, it vanished. Storms had claimed his ships. Fire had eaten through his counting house, and a sickness that rotted the mind and body alike had taken his wife, leaving him alone with 3 daughters. The 2 eldest, Celeste and Violette, were as spoiled as they were beautiful, each with hair like spun gold and smiles as sharp as glass. They scorned their new life of poverty, demanding silks and perfumes, as if the world still owed them. The youngest, Belle, was different. She tended their sickly father without complaint. She brushed dust from the cottage windows and read aloud from their few surviving books at night, weaving old words into warmth around the hearth. There was something otherworldly about Belle. She was quiet, but not meek, gentle, but not naive. When she looked into the woods, beyond the edge of their new home, it was with recognition, not fear. The villagers whispered that she'd been touched by something unnatural, a child born under a blood moon, one who spoke to shadows as if they listened. They weren't entirely wrong. One cruel winter evening, Corbin prepared to journey across the frost-bitten forest to the next town, desperate to seek help from a former partner. As he packed, his daughters made requests. "A necklace of moonstone," said Violette, filing her cracked nails. "Silks from Maurienne," said Celeste. "The blue kind that never fades." "And you, Belle?" Corbin asked. She hesitated, eyes flickering toward the forest. "A rose," she said at last, "one that still grows in this dead season, if you can find one." Corbin smiled weakly and left before dawn, the breath of his old mare fogging the air in ghostly clouds. He never made it to town. Days passed, then a week. The snow thickened, trees groaned like bones. The sisters grieved only for what he failed to bring. Belle, however, went looking. She took no lantern, no food, just her mother's old red cloak and a bundle of dried herbs tied in a charm. The forest swallowed her. At first, the path was familiar, but soon the trees twisted into unnatural shapes. Branches arched like ribs, bark puckered like diseased flesh. Time stuttered. Her breath didn't fog. The air was neither warm nor cold. And then she saw it, a rosebush, impossibly blooming amidst the frost. The roses were black. As she reached out, a voice broke the silence like shattering glass. "You trespass." Belle turned slowly. Behind her stood a creature neither man nor beast, towering, cloaked in matted fur and bone-plated armour. Its face was obscured beneath a shattered porcelain mask, half of it snarling in perpetual agony. Antlers curled from its head like the branches of the trees surrounding them. Her heart did not race. Her hands did not tremble. "I meant no harm," she said. "You came for the rose." "I came for my father." The creature's breath rattled through the woods. "Then you will take his place." It turned, and the trees parted as if bending to its will. Beyond them stood a crumbling castle, half swallowed by the earth. Thorns, as thick as her arms, curled along its spires. Black mould ran down its walls like blood. Belle followed. Inside, the castle pulsed like a living thing. Walls breathed. Shadows moved against the grain of candlelight. Portraits with slit eyes watched her silently. The beast said nothing as he led her through halls that curved in ways geometry defied. At last, he stopped before a door carved from bone. "Your room," he said. She stepped inside. The walls were covered in ivy. The ceiling pulsed like skin. A single rose bloomed in a vase of black glass on the bedside table. When she turned, he was gone. That night, Belle did not sleep. Something called to her from below, a whisper beneath the stone. She rose. Candles lit themselves as she passed. The castle wanted her to explore. Stairs bent toward her feet. Doors swung open without touch. And at last, she found the garden. It was a graveyard. Rows and rows of stone markers stood in place of flowers, each etched with a woman's name. Celeste, Violette, Marie, Isolde, names from stories and legends, and one with her own, Belle Leclerc. She touched the stone. It was warm. Behind her, the beast stood again. Only now, he held the rose she had wanted, but its petals bled down his clawed hand. "You should not have come here," he said. "Why are there graves with my name?" He did not answer. Instead, he extended the rose. It opened wider, revealing an eye at its center. It blinked. "What is it?" she asked, voice low. "A memory," the beast said, "or a warning, perhaps both." He closed his hand, crushing the rose into nothingness. When he opened it, only ash remained. Belle said nothing. She turned back to the rows of graves, her name among the others. The dirt beneath her boots was soft, recently turned. "You've done this before," she said. "To others?" "No," the beast replied. "They came willingly. Each made their own bargain, some to save their kin, others to defy their fate. You are only the latest to walk these halls." "And what bargain did I make?" The beast tilted his head, the antlers scraping the archway above him. "You came for your father." Belle's eyes narrowed. "Then show him to me." The garden shuddered around them, as if her demand had unsettled the earth itself. The beast turned without a word and began walking. Belle followed, winding through a corridor of thorns that seemed to grow and retract at the beast's whim. As they passed under a crooked archway, she could hear something, soft moaning, the clink of chains. They descended into the belly of the castle. The dungeon was not made of stone. It was grown. Vines formed walls. slick with sap and something thicker, flesh-like pods pulsed along the ceiling, glowing faintly, and from each one a low hum echoed, heartbeat-like. Belle passed dozens of these pods before the beast stopped before a particular one, semi-transparent. Inside, curled like a fetus in a womb, was Corbin Leclerc. He was asleep, though his eyes moved beneath the lids as if dreaming. Belle pressed her hand to the surface. It was warm. It gave beneath her touch, like stretched skin. "He's not in pain," the beast said behind her. "Not anymore." She spun to face him. "Release him." "I cannot." "Why?" "Because you are his replacement. You are here, so he does not have to be." Belle stared into the thing that held her father. She could see the colour of his beard, silver now, not with age, but with fear. The longer she looked, the more she realised he wasn't simply sleeping. He was changing. His skin shimmered faintly. His nails had thickened. His body pulsed in rhythm with the walls. "You're turning him into part of this place," she whispered. The beast said nothing. Belle backed away. The castle allowed her no exit. Doors that had once opened now twisted into mouths. Staircases led only downward. Windows, when found, were not windows at all, just paintings of the outside world, scenes that blinked when stared at too long. Still, Belle did not scream. She explored. The castle fed her strange meals, plates of meat that bled green, bread that breathed when torn open, wine as black as ink that tasted of memories not her own. At night, the beast sat outside her chamber door. She could hear him breathe, hear the scratch of claw on stone. He never entered, and she never invited him in. On the fourth night, she did. "You said they made their own bargains," she said as he stepped inside. "What about you?" The beast stood at the edge of the candlelight. "I made the first." He removed his mask. What lay beneath was not grotesque. It was worse. It was human. His face, though tired and pale, was untouched by fur or fang. His eyes were ancient, sorrowful. Scars ran across his jaw, and one of his antlers had pierced through the side of his skull. "I was the first to make a deal with this place, to save my kingdom, to protect my people. I gave myself to the house. It gave me power, and then it gave me hunger." "Hunger for what?" He looked up at her with hollow eyes. "Beauty." Belle dreamt of roses that night, thousands of them, red and black, blooming and dying in seconds. From each fell a girl with her face, each different, each dressed in another century's gown, all screaming in unison as they were swallowed by roots. She awoke with blood on her hands. It wasn't her own. The beast was gone. In his place was a single petal. It glowed faintly, thrumming with the same pulse as the castle. She tucked it into her bodice and left the room. She descended deeper than before, past the garden, past the dream pods, into the roots of the castle. Here the halls were narrow, pressing in like ribs. Shadows whispered her name. At last she came to a mirror, tall, blackened, surrounded by dozens of silver masks hanging like trophies. Belle approached. The mirror rippled, and in it she saw herself, older, crowned, cloaked in petals. The beast stood beside her, but his antlers were gone, and his mask was whole. Around them, the castle thrived, vines blooming with roses that blinked and bled. She reached out, a hand reached back. Then the mirror shattered. From the shards rose something else, a creature made of petals and bone, with Belle's face, but no eyes. It lunged. Belle did not run. She whispered the name of the petal tucked in her bodice. Amaranthine. The shard creature froze. The castle screamed, and Belle remembered the charm she had tied in her cloak, the bundle of herbs her mother once told her would protect against the old things in the woods. She held it high. The creature writhed, shrieking, and collapsed into dust. The mirrors cracked around her, one by one. Faces poured from them, Celeste, Violette, countless others, all bearing Belle's eyes. Each whispered the same phrase before vanishing. Don't become the rose. The phrase clung to her like frost on breath. Don't become the rose. Not a rose. The rose. Belle stumbled from the hall of mirrors, her heart thudding with something deeper than fear. A knowing, the scent of ash and petals clung to her hands. Somewhere in the distance, the castle moaned, not with pain, but with longing, as if it knew she had peeled back one of its veils and hungered for her to see more. She made her way to the east wing. The castle had once hidden it from her. Doors fused shut, stairs that broke beneath her step. But now they welcomed her passage. It wanted her there now. It wanted her curiosity, her defiance. The east wing was colder than the rest. Snow gathered on the window ledges, though they remained tightly sealed. The stone underfoot was cracked, pocked with age and claw marks. At the end of the hallway stood a door of gnarled wood, writhing with rose vines that hissed softly as she approached. They parted for her. Inside was a room that did not belong in this world. It was a throne room, though the throne itself was not made of gold or stone, but of antlers and vertebrae. Hanging above it was a chandelier fashioned from dozens of broken masks, each identical to the beast's own, but in various stages of decay. Paintings lined the walls. Each one depicted a woman, all different, all hauntingly familiar. Belle approached the nearest. The woman's dress was spun of starlight, her eyes coal black, her mouth stitched shut. She recognized her sister's cheekbones in the face. Another painting showed a girl standing barefoot in snow, her hair braided with frost-bitten roses. Another with wings of glass, one with bark for skin. All of them wore her face, and at the far end of the room, On a pedestal of bones and roots stood the true rose. It was monstrous, 6 feet tall, its stem twisted into a spine, its petals like velvet razors, and within its bloom, half open, sat a heart, beating slowly, rhythmically. It pulsed with her name, Belle, Belle, Belle. The beast appeared behind her. "You were not meant to find this yet," he said. "Is it mine?" "No, but it will be." He lowered his head. "Yes." The beast told her everything. The castle had once been a gift from something ancient, a creature beneath the forest that had no name, only hunger. It offered power, beauty, resurrection, but each came at a price. The beast had asked for protection from death, from war, from rot. In return, the castle demanded offerings, lives to feed its heart, and the heart could only be sustained by beauty, by women chosen, not just for their faces, but for the secrets they carried, the blood in their veins, the paths they had walked. The rose was the vessel. It consumed each offering fully, flesh, spirit, memory. Nothing remained, not even bones. The petals bloomed with the remnants of their identities, and the castle fed on the rest. But Belle was different. She hadn't just come. She was invited by the castle itself. "You're not a prisoner," the beast said. "You're an heir." Belle left without answering. The castle didn't stop her. Its corridors bent aside like reeds before a river. It let her climb the tallest tower, where the wind howled like distant wolves, and the moon hung low and full. She looked down and saw the forest below, reaching toward her with skeletal arms. Somewhere in its depths, she knew, her father still slumbered. The transformation would soon be complete. He would no longer be Corbin. He would be another dreaming vine, another heartbeat within the castle. Belle turned away and found herself staring into the mirror again. But this time it did not show her. It showed the beast. He was seated upon the bone throne, mask in hand, face weary. He was alone. The castle trembled around him like a dying beast, and then, slowly, petals began to fall from the ceiling like snow. They landed on his shoulders, his hands, his face, and where they touched, he withered. Belle fled the tower and returned to the graveyard garden. She traced her fingers along her own name. This time, it was no longer etched in stone. It was carved in living bark, growing, still unfinished. Something inside her stirred, not fear, not despair, a choice. She turned from her grave and made her way to the beast's chamber. He was already waiting. "I won't become the rose," she said. "No," he agreed, rising slowly. "You'll become the thorns." The words hung between them like fog. "You'll become the thorns." Belle did not speak. She felt the castle breathing through the floor, slow and heavy. It had drawn her this far with open doors and whispered dreams. Now it waited. The beast turned away from her, walking to the centre of the chamber, where a great seal was carved into the floor. It pulsed like a wound, veins of red and gold snaking outward, disappearing beneath the stone walls. With a whisper in a language Belle didn't recognise, but somehow understood, the beast summoned the seal open. The ground split. Beneath lay a staircase of ribs, spiralling downward into darkness, so thick it swallowed sound. He looked over his shoulder. If you follow, you cannot return unchanged. Was I ever meant to return? She asked. He gave no answer. She followed. The air grew thick as blood. The walls narrowed with every step, lined with pressed flowers, roses flattened between layers of glass, each one preserving the distorted scream of a woman within its folds. Belle looked away, or tried to. One of the roses twitched. She stopped. It was her mother's face behind the petals, contorted, mouth stretched open, eyes wide and pleading. Belle gasped. The vision vanished. The rose was just a rose again. Memories, the beast said from the shadows ahead. Echoes of what the castle consumes. It likes to show us our truths. My mother died in her sleep, Belle murmured. Did she? The beast asked. Or was that the story your father gave you? Belle didn't answer. At the bottom of the stair, the world opened into something that could not be called a room. It was a heart, a vast living chamber, throbbing with life. Veins as thick as trees pulsed along its ceiling. At its centre stood a tree of thorns, massive and black, bearing only a single bloom, an open rose the size of a coffin. Inside the bloom, something moved. It was a woman. She floated in the petals, naked and sleeping. Her skin shimmered like pearl. Her hair drifted around her like smoke. Her chest rose and fell with each beat of the castle's heart. Who is she? Belle asked. She is the first, the beast replied. The one who gave herself fully, not out of love, not out of sacrifice, but out of hunger. She wanted to never age, never die. The castle gave her that, and in return, she became its root. He stepped toward the thorn tree. She is the queen of thorns, and she is waking. Belle felt it then, a pull in her chest, as if something ancient were calling her blood home. The same feeling she'd had near the garden graves, the same thrum that lived in the rose petal she still carried. She clutched her bodice, fingers closing around the charm bundle. The herbs inside were withered now, blackened. The queen's eyes opened. They were Belle's eyes, but older, wiser, cruel. The beast fell to one knee. Belle remained standing. You are not mine, the queen said, through unmoving lips. Her voice echoed in Belle's mind, like thunder under glass. No, Belle said, and I won't be. You came to the castle. You ate its food, slept beneath its breath. You took the rose. You saw your name etched in bark. I chose nothing, Belle snapped. I was led, lured, lied to. The queen's smile cracked her face like porcelain. All the same, the petals began to close around her once more, but Belle stepped forward, pulling the blood petal from her bodice and holding it aloft. "I saw your grave in the garden," Belle said. "I saw all of them. Do they sing to you? Do you hear them?" The Queen blinked. "They scream." "Then listen now." She threw the petal into the heart of the thorn tree. The effect was instant. The tree shuddered violently. Its thorns writhed. The rose snapped shut with a wet crack. The veins above burst, spraying golden ichor across the chamber. The Queen screamed, not from pain, but from fury. "You would kill your own blood." "I don't know if you are my blood," Belle said, voice shaking, "but I know what you are. A lie dressed in petals." The Queen surged upward, but the beast stepped between them. "No," he said softly. "This is her choice now." He looked back at Belle one final time. "Burn it." Belle raised the charm bundle and spoke the name of the herb buried inside, the one her mother whispered into her ear before death. Wolfsbane. The chamber erupted into flame, not fire as we know it, but flame that screamed, wept, remembered. The walls curled inward, the rose tree cracked, petals ignited, burning into faces, then ashes. The Queen's scream echoed into eternity, and then silence. Belle awoke on the castle floor, not in her chamber, not in the dungeon, but in the entrance hall, where dust motes hung in still air. Morning light shone through the stained glass. The castle was quiet. The thorns had withered. The portraits were blank. The mirrors shattered. She stood slowly, expecting pain, but her body felt whole. At the centre of the hall stood the beast, but not as she had last seen him. His antlers were gone. His claws were human. His eyes were hers. "You chose the thorns," he said, "and you survived. I didn't want to become like her." "No," he said, "you became something else." He held out a hand, and from the ground beneath them, roses began to bloom. Not black, not red, but white, pure and silent, the first the castle had ever grown. The white roses bloomed without sound, their petals unfurling like parchment soaked in moonlight. They glowed faintly, not with enchantment, but with peace, an unfamiliar emotion within the castle's bones. The beast, no longer cloaked in fur or shadow, stood beside Belle, watching the transformation. His shoulders were bowed, not from burden, but from release. For the first time since she had met him, his presence did not command dread. He seemed smaller, sadder, more real. "What happens now?" Belle asked. The question echoed through the castle, unanswered by the stones. "You've killed the Queen," he said softly. "The root of all this, but the castle still remembers her. It still remembers you. Will it die? I don't know." He stepped forward, knelt, and pressed a hand to the floor. The roses paused their blooming. He closed his eyes. "It's waiting." "For what?" He looked up at her. "For you to choose." They left the hall and walked through the castle together. The change was evident everywhere. The once twisting hallways had gone still. Doors stayed open. No more whispers curled through the air. The vines that had grown over portraits had receded, revealing blank canvases where faces had once wept. They passed the dining hall, empty, save for a table set for two. The cutlery was ordinary. The goblets were glass, not bone. The wine was crimson, not black. Belle brushed her fingers along the wood and felt only wood. No breath beneath, no heartbeat in the grain. In the upper chambers, they found the garden again. The graves were gone. In their place, young rose bushes stretched toward the sky. White, pink, and pale lavender. The bark that once bore Belle's name had shed, leaving smooth, unmarked wood. The air smelled of earth instead of decay, and in the corner, among the thorns, lay a bundle of tattered cloth and silver hair. Her father, he was breathing, curled in a nest of vines. Corbin Leclerc's eyes opened as Belle fell to her knees. He looked at her through a haze of dream and shadow. "You found me," he rasped. "I never stopped looking." He reached up to touch her face. His fingers trembled. "I thought I was gone." "You were, but you're back." Behind her, the man who had been the beast stood silent. When Corbin noticed him, his breath caught, but he did not cry out. He only nodded. "Thank you," he said. The man nodded back. That night, the castle allowed them rest. Belle's chamber had transformed. The walls were no longer pulsing. The vines had retreated. The air smelled of jasmine. She lay awake for hours, unsure of what dawn would bring. When sleep came, it was deep, dreamless. When she awoke, her father was gone. She found him in the main hall, standing beside the roses. "I can't go back," he said, smiling faintly. "Not really. You don't have to." He reached into his coat and handed her something, an old key, wrought from iron, etched with runes. "It was in the root chamber," he said. "It called to me." Belle turned it in her palm. It was heavy with intent. The man, formerly beast, approached. "It opens the last door." Belle looked up. "Where?" He pointed toward the top of the west tower, the only place she hadn't yet gone. The west tower had once been sealed by a door of bone. Now, the bones had turned to salt. She unlocked it and climbed the stairs. At the top was a room filled with light, and in the centre, a cradle. It was woven from hair and shadow. Inside, curled like a sleeping babe, was a rosebud, pale blue, still closed. As Belle approached, it opened. Inside was a seed. It pulsed with something new, not hunger, hope. The man stood behind her. "This is the castle's last gift," he said, "or its apology. What do I do with it?" "You plant it." He handed her a blade made of white thorn. "And you choose where." Belle stared at the seed, then at the knife. Understanding blossomed. The castle would not simply vanish. It would not fade gently into time. It had to be buried, with intent, with memory. She took the seed and the knife, walked down the tower and into the forest. She found a clearing where the sun pierced the trees. There she dug with her hands, laid the seed in the soil. She cut her palm and let her blood drip into the earth. The soil drank it, the forest sighed, and the castle began to tremble. Back at the ruins, the stones fell silently, the thorns withered, the windows cracked, the stained glass melted into rain. The man who had been the beast stood at the threshold as it collapsed around him. He did not run. He looked at Belle one last time and smiled. "I was never meant to be saved," he said, "but you were." The castle fell. The castle's collapse echoed through the valley like the final chord of a funeral hymn. No dust rose, no smoke. The stones didn't shatter. They simply folded inward, dissolving into soil, into moss, into memory. Where once the great halls had stood, now only the clearing remained. In its centre, a sapling had begun to rise. Its bark shimmered with pale light, and its leaves were soft as silk, glowing faintly blue. It did not feel like an ending. It felt like a seed of something older than endings. Belle stood in the clearing long after the last wall had fallen, her father beside her, silent, watching. "Is it over?" he asked eventually. She shook her head. "It's just quieter now." They returned to the village, but the village was not as they had left it. The people had changed, or perhaps it was Belle who had changed. Children stared at her with wide eyes. Elders crossed themselves. Some muttered prayers. Others offered flowers, small gifts, food. No one asked what had happened in the forest. They already knew. Not in words, but in bones. The innkeeper's wife whispered. She walked with the beast and came back with the silence. No one said more. They gave Belle a cottage on the edge of the woods, one that had been long abandoned, overgrown with ivy and mould. She cleaned it, alone. Her father lived nearby, but age had caught up with him. He did not speak of the castle. He often sat by the fire, humming songs Belle didn't recognize, staring into flames that didn't burn. He would not last the year. She knew it. So did he. But neither of them wept. As the months passed, Belle tended her garden, not just herbs, but roses, white ones, blue ones, ones that hadn't existed before. She sang to them in the old tongue, the one she had heard in dreams and blood, the one the beast had spoken to the roots, the language that tasted like stone and ash and honey. Sometimes the petals hummed back. Each morning she visited the forest clearing. The sapling had grown taller than her now, twisting skyward in soft spirals. Its bark held the faces of flowers that had never been named, and sometimes, when she stood near it, Belle could feel the castle again, not looming, not cruel, but watchful. Beneath the soil, something ancient still pulsed, changed, but not gone. It remembered her, and she remembered it. On the longest night of the year, Belle dreamed of the mirror. not shattered, whole. She stood in front of it, wearing a gown made of snow. Her hair was braided with white vines, and her eyes were darker than before, less innocent, more knowing. Behind her stood the man, the one who had been beast, but he was different now, unseen by reflection. He lived in the frame itself, watching her through the silver. "You are the last," he said. Belle reached out. The mirror pulsed, and a single rose petal drifted from its surface into her palm. Black, alive. She woke with it still in her hand. The petal did not rot. It whispered, in sleep, in silence. It told her things, of places where roses bloomed on cliffsides, soaked in salt, of beasts who wore no masks, but hunted all the same, of a world where beauty was a currency that always required blood, and of the queen, not gone, waiting, rootless. Belle returned to the clearing. The sapling was now a tree. Beneath it, the earth had cracked open. A chasm had begun to form, silent, deep, breathing. Belle knelt beside it, holding the petal to her lips. "I know you," she said. The wind shifted. A voice rose, not from the petal, but from the roots. "Do you think you've won?" It was not a question. It was a promise. Belle placed the petal in the chasm and closed it with her palm. "You taught me beauty," she whispered, "but I learned thorns." The chasm closed. After that, the tree did not grow any taller, but it bloomed once, a single rose, white at the base, black at the tips, pulsing softly with a light not of this world. Belle watched it every day, and every day she changed. Her hair grew darker, streaked with ash. Her eyes turned mirror glass in the sun. She did not age. She did not tire. People came to her for herbs, for stories, for luck. Some called her a witch, others a saint, but all brought offerings because they knew. She was the new keeper of the threshold, the new face of the thorn. The years passed, but Belle did not wither. She was no longer spoken of as the merchant's daughter or the girl who had once lived among beasts. She became La Dame de Rose, the Lady of the Roses, a myth in her own time. Villagers swore she never aged, though none could say how long she had walked among them. Children born after the fall of the castle grew up with tales of her eyes that caught moonlight like mirrors, her garden that never slept, and the tree in the forest that bled light when no one watched. Still, she remained human, or mostly so, but deep within her the petal's whisper still stirred, and far beneath the roots of the blooming tree, something ancient moved again. It began with the flowers. Her roses started blooming out of season. They wept dew that smelled of metal, their colours darkened by the hour, lavender to plum, white to crimson, until even the purest turned black at the tips. Then came the birds, migratory species that should have long since vanished south, gathering in the tree branches, silent and unmoving, their eyes wide and unblinking. The villagers stopped coming, not out of fear, but reverence. Something sacred was unravelling, and they wanted no part of its thread. Belle knew what was happening. The seed she had buried, the chasm she had sealed, had not been an end. It had been a womb. That night, the mirror returned. It did not wait for her in dreams this time. It stood at the foot of her bed, silent and alive. Within it, she saw herself, but the reflection did not mimic her. It moved on its own. Its smile curled slowly, unnaturally. Its eyes gleamed too brightly. "You forgot," the reflection said. "I buried you," Belle replied. "No, you nourished me." The reflection raised its hand, and the mirror fractured, not into shards, but into petals. Each piece fluttered from the glass like falling leaves, forming a spiral around Belle's feet. She stepped back. The reflection did not fade. It stepped out. It wore her face, her voice, but it was not Belle. It was the Queen, born again through the seed and the silence, rebuilt in mirror flesh, shaped by thorns and softened by time. She smiled, and the house trembled. "You opened the door, Belle," she said, "and left it ajar." Belle reached for the charm she had worn around her neck for years, a new one, filled with fresh herbs, woven tightly, but the herbs had blackened, crumbled to dust in her fingers. "You are not welcome here," Belle said, though her voice cracked. "I never left," said the Queen. "The fight did not happen with fire or blood. It happened in roots and memory." The Queen walked through Belle's cottage, and every vine recoiled. The tree in the clearing bent toward her, as if in prayer. The animals fled. The air thickened. Belle stood before the blooming rose and spoke its name aloud for the first time. "Solace." The rose quivered. A second petal opened. The Queen paused. "Clever child," she murmured. Belle raised her hands and called to the castle that had once claimed her. "You remember me," she said aloud. "I fed you, I burned you, I made you bloom." The tree responded. Its bark split. Roots unfurled from the earth like hands, and the Queen hissed. The battle was not one of violence, but of will. Belle stepped into the hollow of the tree, letting its light wash over her. The Queen stepped forward to follow, but the roots caught her, slowed her, pulled at her shadow. "You are a memory," Belle said, "a hunger without form." "I am you," the Queen spat. "What you were becoming, what you still can be." Belle reached into the heart of the tree. Her hand found another seed, smaller, warmer, alive. She whispered a name, not hers, not the beast's, but the castle's true name, Sion. The moment she spoke it, the Queen howled, and the light from the tree erupted outward, not as flame, but as grace, a wind made of forgotten prayers, a pulse of all the names once buried in the graveyard garden, a voice without a tongue, saying only, "No more." When Belle opened her eyes, she was alone. The mirror was gone, the queen was gone. Only the tree remained, petals closed, silent. She planted the new seed beside it, pressing it gently into the earth with both hands. There was no blood this time, no bargain, only care. As she stood, a single white rose bloomed beside her feet. It did not whisper, it listened. Word reached the nearest towns that winter. The Lady of the Roses had vanished. Some claimed she'd become a tree herself, standing forever in the clearing. Her hair turned to vines, her bones to root. Others claimed she had returned to the castle, rebuilt from dream stuff and sorrow, and ruled there in silence. Only one traveller ever claimed to have seen her since, a boy lost in the woods during a storm, who said a woman with mirror eyes and thorns in her braid led him to safety, then vanished into the trees without leaving footprints. All he found was a rose. It was black and blooming, but beneath the soil something moved, not in warning, not in hunger, but in remembrance. Years passed, generations. The story of the beast faded into the fog of folklore. The castle was said to have never existed, or to have been swallowed by the earth after a great sin. Parents warned their children away from the northern woods, where the trees bent low and no echo ever returned. But the children came anyway, not in fear, in curiosity, and sometimes, very rarely, those who entered the clearing did not return alone. They came back changed, with eyes that gleamed silver in moonlight, with hair that smelled faintly of roses, even in winter, with dreams they did not recognize, filled with masked faces and gardens that wept. One girl came back with a scar shaped like a thorn curling down her forearm. She said a woman had given it to her, said it was protection. No one believed her, except the ones who dreamed the same dreams. Far beneath the clearing, where no shovel could reach, a chamber bloomed. It was not stone, not root, not flesh. It was memory. There, the echoes of the beast's voice still lived, not as growls or commands, but lullabies, phrases half remembered, whispered over sleepless nights, words like sacrifice and silence, blooming with new meaning. And at the centre of this chamber was a rose, the final rose. Its petals were not red, nor white, nor black, but the colour of shadow, lit by starlight. It was beautiful in a way the eye could not measure, terrible in a way the heart could not hold. It bore no thorns, it did not need them. Belle remained, not as a queen, not as a prisoner, but as something in between. Each year, when the first frost kissed the forest, she woke for one night, walked among the trees, watched over the seed she'd planted. She no longer wore a crown. She wore moss, ivy, threads of sky caught in her hair. Her hands held no blade, but the weight of 1,000 broken promises woven into lullabies. She walked past the graves no one else could see, names from long ago, still sleeping beneath the new soil. She knelt before the rose that had bloomed the day the queen was sealed. It greeted her with silence. She smiled. One winter, a girl stumbled into the clearing. Her eyes were red from weeping. Her hands clutched a ribbon torn from her sister's dress. She had come seeking something: vengeance, forgiveness, power. Belle watched from the tree line. The girl wept at the base of the twin roses, pressing the ribbon into the snow. "Please," she whispered, "I don't want to forget her." The roses shivered. Belle stepped forward. The girl turned. For a moment, neither moved. Then Belle reached out and placed her fingers on the girl's brow. A single drop of light passed between them, and the girl knew her sister's name would never be forgotten. Belle vanished with the first sunrise, but the girl returned to the village with a rose unlike any seen before, its petals edged in silver, its scent like honey and frost. She planted it beside her sister's grave. It never wilted, and so the tale of the beast and the beauty changed, no longer one of captivity and monstrous love, but of memory, of seeds and silence, of what grows when the world is cruel, and what blooms when we refuse to forget.